the Finance Committee to order. Sorry for the late start. Today is the first department presentation. We have Public Works joining us to kick off this part of the process. Alder Arnett is in a meeting in the Office of Law, so he'll be up any minute. So he'd like us to start, and he'll join us.
Good, let's get it all done while we can.
I think, Bruce, is there anything else sort of on this agenda that we have to get into today, aside from Public Works?
Public Works.
Okay.
I thought, that also we could get into the road Public Works capital.
Sure. Great. Welcome. So David, we were debating the other day that we have, in the time you've been joining us for these, we've gone from, asking department heads to come in to give us a presentation, to stop doing that, to now back to doing it. So we figured you'd know what, sort of how to handle that. But I'm sure there'll be some questions from folks, but feel free to present however you like.
Okay. So my name's David Gerald, Director of Public Works. On my immediate left is Marcia Patrick, the Assistant Director, and on her left is Sam Bryce, who's our Chief of Engineering. So I guess I'll just kind of wing it and share, what my thoughts are about our budget. First of all, we don't have any enhancement requests. We had a few minor issues that we were able to work out in the development of the budget on the administration side. So that's good news. No enhancement requests. We're satisfied with the budget as it's presented. One of the big issues is the solid waste fee reduction, 22% reduction this year. Just by way of background, we've had fee reductions for solid waste for the last several years. In fact, we have essentially since we did the outsourcing to Bates a few years ago. So just the time that I've been here, the fee was $380 when I got here in FY11, and that was before we'd outsourced. We had to increase it to $420 per resident in FY12, again before we outsourced. We then outsourced that year. We kept it level for the next couple of years because we weren't quite sure what was going to happen with the outsourcing, if Bates would even stick around, or if there were going to be big cost increases, or claims for additional costs. So we kept it. We took it back to 380 and then kept it there for the next couple of years, and then had a fair fund balance. So in FY15 we decreased it by 15% to 323 per resident per year. In FY16, another 15% decrease to 275. Last year, there was discussion, Alderman Budge and others, discussion of having a larger decrease because, again, we still had a surplus. But there were a lot of questions because our yard waste contract was coming up for renewal, our refuse disposal contract was coming up, and our recycling, all three contracts were coming up for renewal. So there was uncertainty there. So we weren't real comfortable about a large decrease just because we weren't sure what some of our major cost drivers were going to look like after the renewal of the contracts. The good news is that the renewal of all three of those were very advantageous. We ended up on the refuse side, our contracts with Annapolis Junction Waste Management. In the past, we just piggybacked on the Anne Arundel County contract. We actually negotiated our own contract on a going forward basis and got very favorable terms. So that's allowing us to decrease. The fact that we moved away from plastic for yard waste because the county did, so we had to as well, makes that cost go down because the yard waste is much more valuable when it doesn't have plastic in it. So they're able to make that into a commodity that they can sell, so that drives the cost down. So we got a very favorable, and we ended up going to Prince George's County for that as well and got a very good rate. And then the recycling contract was renegotiated. There's going to be some changes. They're not going to want plastic for the recycling as well. So right now, a lot of our residents put their recycling in plastic and then throw it in the container. We're going to do a big public rollout, but that's not going to be allowed under the future contract. If it does come into the recycling center in a plastic bag, they're just going to throw it in it becomes refuse. So they're not even going to send it through the recycling center. So we'll talk about that a lot more coming forward. But anyway, that renewal of the contract was advantageous too. So because of all those factors, taking that uncertainty away, we now have those long-term contracts that are very favorable. We're able to decrease it significantly to 204, which is about 22% decrease.
I think just sort of there's probably some questions about that.
Sure.
Obviously off topic a little bit.
What's the present charge? I mean, what will we be charging?
So this year it's $261.
And that's basically trash pickup, I mean.
Trash and recycling and yard waste and bulk, yes. It's everything that Bates does at residences. It's everything that they pick up, $261. And so that's decreasing to $204 per year. So it's a $57 decrease. But on dollar terms, doesn't sound like that much, but that's a 22% decrease in the fee. So
Well, it's down from a high of 400 and...
420.
420.
Yep.
Okay.
In FY12 it was 420, so now it's 204.
Thank you.
And with all these new contracts, how long do we sort of lock this rate structure in going forward?
Well, each of those contracts is, I think, at least 5 years, right? So the next big item is going to be the Bates contract runs out in 2 years. So we'll have to rebid at that time. So there'll be some uncertainty surrounding what kind of pricing we get from the next contract.
Sure.
We definitely have a very good contract right now with Bates. If you look at all the contracts that the county has, they're all much higher. And there's differences. Our houses are much closer together, so it's cheaper for them to collect. They're spread a bit further apart in the county. So there's some reasons for that, but still, if you look at some of the more urban areas of Anne Arundel County, the contracts that they have there versus ours is a very advantageous contract from a cost perspective. So that's one big change. Water and sewer rates, we're kicking off the study of the water and sewer rates. As the code envisions, we do an update of the rate study each year. We're kicking that off and anticipate that there'll be a relatively small increase in the water and sewer rates, basically to keep up with inflation.
When is that expected to be completed?
It needs to be by June.
Okay.
Yeah.
And will you be adjusting rates at that time, or is that just something for us to study and see if we could?
There'll be an adjustment, I'm sure, and it'll be effective July 1st. So remember that the way the code is now, that the administration can do an increase up to, 4.99%. It's got to be below 5% without council approval. So if the recommended increase is above 5%, it'll have to come to the council, but I don't anticipate that.
Okay, so that would be the top, the most it would be increased would be 5%?
Just below.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
so if it's 5 or above, it has to come to the council. If it's below 5, it can be done by the administration.
Could be less, could be decreased for all we know?
No. No, not, again, and Bruce can explain this probably a lot better, but with the revenue bonds, we have to maintain certain financial metrics, and that's just not possible at this time with all the...
Yeah, but right, the cost of...
Some of the big new things that are happening, and this is going to be a big year for Public Works. So our water treatment plant actually went online, is now producing water for the city as of last night. So the startup period ended, and what we call the demonstration period. started last night. So the contractor's running the new plant.
That's exciting.
Yeah, putting the water into the distribution system. They've got to keep it running around the clock for 30 days to be successful. And if they are successful after that 30 days, then we take over the plant. It becomes our plant, and they do everything else that needs to be done to finish up the project. And that's mostly demolition of the old facilities, our old treatment facilities, which will no longer be required, once the new plant's proven to be successful for that 30-day test. There was some discussion, and I wish Alderman Arnett was here for this, because I briefed the Environmental Matters Committee about the status of the project, and he had questions about the staffing. So maybe I'll wait till he comes and circle back to the staffing, because I've got all those numbers now.
Good. Thank you.
But how that's going to affect the budget in the future is obviously the cost of having a water treatment plant is going to drop in the future. So a new plant that's fully automated and not going to require staffing around the clock is going to be cheaper to run. And that was a big part of why it made sense to build this new plant. So that wasn't reflected in the FY18 budget, but it certainly will need to be in the FY19 budget, because we'll know what the costs are and what it's going to take and what the staffing. We'll very gradually draw down the staffing, because we just want to make sure that everything is safe and ready to go, but the staffing will be drawn down going forward.
So basically, in the context of the budget cycles, that as we'll strike this budget in June, it's an issue to basically watch through the year, and then we'll come back in the next budget.
Yeah, the way it's proposed is the status quo budget for this coming year, and then it will be able to be decreased in the future.
Makes sense.
The Public Works Maintenance Facility, construction is going to start in mid-June. That's going to take probably just over a year to complete. So again, when we look at the FY19 budget and some of the costs that are associated with having that facility out there, they should drop, because that'll be a very energy efficient facility that will have all of our divisions centralized out there. So we won't be paying rent on Chickapin Round Road like we are right now. Everybody will be consolidated in that facility.
This is the Spa Road facility,
Yes.
presumably?
Yeah, so the buildings on the east side, the side where the gas pumps are, that's all going to be demolished except for the gas pumps.
If they don't fall down first.
Right, yeah, it's not going to take much to push them over probably. So that starts June 15th, and then the new building's going to be constructed on that side. On the other side, which is our current fleet maintenance facility, that's just going to be cleaned up, made to look better and be a storage, basically a vehicle storage building on the other side. And the salt dome will remain where it is right now.
Will the bus still use that as a turnaround, the MTA?
As far as I know, yeah. There's no reason why they wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hardly complaining about it. I
Yeah.
think it's an obvious spot for them to do it. I think that's probably as good a spot as we'll find anywhere near anything in the
Right.
city. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
So again, next summer that building should be wrapped up. The City Dock Flood Mitigation Project is starting up hot and heavy. AECom is on board as our planner and designer. We've already gone to HBC once for a pre-application hearing, just to present some of the concepts to them and get feedback. We're going to have public meetings on the concepts, both with the business community and with Ward 1 Residents Association, so we can discuss the concepts. Our hope is to get through that process this summer and start on detailed design, so by the end of the year we'll have some detailed design for that project, so we can go back to the governor and to the legislature to try and get additional funds. As you all know, we also submitted a $3 million grant request to FEMA to try and get money for that project as well. That's about a $5 million project for phase 1 to deal with the storm drain issues. So that's moving ahead.
A quick question, if I may. the storm drain work is, and you're intercepting the storm drains that come from high uphill and flushing them straight into the Ego Alley. Is the level of the intercept above the forecast for sea level rise? And, or how high up is
And
that?
Sam, you can help me with this, but I think we're going up at least,
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
we expect to get a new stormwater permit this summer, and one of the requirements of the stormwater permit will be to treat 20% of the current impervious area in the city, which means we're going to have a lot of MS4 projects. We've gone out with a request for qualifications first for firms to help us with that effort. And it's going to function sort of as a P3, a public-private partnership type arrangement. But they'll have planning, design, build, construction, and maintenance responsibilities for 20 years for those projects. And potentially with to provide financing as well. So it's going to be a pretty innovative type contract. We got qualifications. We interviewed the 3 firms that submitted, and now we're going to issue proposals and get some more information. Those were just based on qualifications. Now they're going to give us technical proposals on how they would handle the program. So again, we don't have the permit yet, but we know what it's going to say, what it's going to require, the 20% treatment. So we're trying to get ahead of that and get a contractor on board to help us with that effort.
And this is, I mean, we could talk at the end a little bit about the capital budget and your particular projects, but the sort of the new funding for that.
There's $1
specific
million.
initiative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's $1 million put in for this current year, and with $1 million to follow each year. Main Street, at long last, is going to be done this coming winter. So again, there's money in the CIP for that, but that's going to be a big effort. And so Sam's the project manager for that, and he's wrapping up the design. We intend to do the water connections first to get that done before we re-brick. So if somebody wants to add a sprinkler system, they won't have to dig into our new street. So we're going to get those done ahead of time, and then do the re-bricking starting in January. And that will probably run until about June.
How does that work? I know we've talked about this before, and I know Joe obviously knows a lot more about this than we do, but I mean, we've always heard when it's talked about the next time it's redone, this should be an incentivized way for the business owners or the people who own the property to try and to do those water lines. Is there some sort of process where you go to them and say, this is, this is coming, and you have a window here, and how is that?
Yeah, so we're
incentivized
actually
anyway?
going to install the services. We're
Oh,
going to tap
interesting.
into
So
the
it's
main
there,
and
and then
install the services, and then treat it as betterment, I think is where we're going to go with it. Treat it as a betterment where they would pay for it
If they want to
if
be.
they opt to use it. Because we're just going to go up to the curb. We're not
Yeah.
going to dig into the sidewalk, so they would have to take it to the curb, but we just don't want to dig up the street.
Interesting. So in some ways it doesn't, once that's done, it's not as time sensitive to, right? But there's, I got you. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
The energy park, of course, is going to become active this fall. Right now, all the power's been sold. All the permits have been issued. There's still some discussion, negotiation with BGE on the interconnect, but that's ready to move forward. Those were the 3 big pieces that were kind of outside the control of the developer, which been able to work through. It took a long time to get through all those. They're doing all the engineering, and then they'll start the procurement. The next big hurdle for the developers is nailing down the final financing for the project, and that is supposed to be completed by mid-June. And then they'll be ready to move forward. I expect for them to break ground, although they're not really breaking ground, but notionally breaking ground this summer, probably in the June, July time frame. And then the first panels will start showing up probably in August. They'll be ready to flip the switch on the first group of panels in about September, October, and they should be completely done by November with the whole 55,000 panels that they're going to install out there. So that project was quiet for a while as they were working through all of these things that they had to work through. But now they're going to move forward this year, so that'll be exciting. Cornhill Street sidewalk and curb is, we weren't able to do it this spring as expected because the money for that's coming from the rec center sales, and that still hasn't closed, so we still haven't seen that money yet. So we're planning to bump that back into, that's another one of Sam's projects, but we're planning to bump that back until this fall, after Labor Day, but before the Christmas holidays to go in there and try and get that done. So we don't want to try and do that at the same time that Main Street's being done. So Cornhill needs to be finished before the holidays, and then after the holidays, Main Street will start. Another big project coming up is the swimming pool. So of course we'll be managing that, and still a lot to be worked out on that, what it's going to look like, where it's going to be sited, what the size is, all of that. But that work will start on that now that we have, it's in the CIP and the funds from the county for the sale of the golf course. And the last one I want to mention is the Honeywell Energy Savings Performance Contract that you all approved last year. That is moving ahead in a very fast-paced way. All of the weatherproofing for buildings that was part of that's being done. We've sent a letter to BGE about purchasing all of the street lights. So that's moving forward. Some of the equipment change-outs, some mechanical equipment replacements, the equipment's on order. So Honeywell is moving forward very quickly on that contract, so that's going very well.
Tell me what that is again, briefly.
So that's, we hired Honeywell to do energy upgrades in all city facilities.
Okay.
And then their services are going to be paid for from the energy savings that we're going to realize. So it was $5 million in last year's CIP to sort of front that.
Okay.
So we issued bonds for it, and the bond payments are going to come from the energy savings.
Do you have anything to do with the energy park?
Yes,
Okay,
separate issue.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
So that's sort of the budget issues. Do we want to stop for questions before we move into the FY18 CIP?
Let's talk about a subject near and dear to the heart of most of our colleagues. The repaving, potholes, that sort of thing. Are there any main streets on the program? I mean, in my area, I know Clay Street has been at or near the top of priorities for a couple of years in a row. That's in god-awful shape. I mean, kids playing ball in the street have a good chance of spraining an ankle and doing other things. Well, it's not good. Tell me what some of the projects you anticipate doing will be.
Okay, let me, what we've got on the paving list right now for this year is we're going to fix the West Street trenches. There's a whole series of water trenches that create a number of fairly significant bumps along West Street, so we're going to build those out and repave those to correct that as a problem. We've got Dogwood, Basswood, and Evergreen over in off of
Victor
Victor
Hayden.
Parkway, in that area. We have Birmingham Wood Court, Chelsea Court, Ashford Court, the remainder of Hunt Meadows Drive, and Heathfield Lane and Fair Hill Court over in Hunt Meadows, Arbor Hill Road and Rose Crest over in Primrose. We've got the remainder of Spa Road, which is pretty much from the enclave up through our facility. We've paved the other 3 sections over the last several years, and this is the remaining section that's left. We have Chesapeake Avenue, and that is, we've held that pending the completion of the water main work.
Right.
That's supposed to be finished by September, so we expect to be in there as soon as they are finished. And I've got Clay Street and Pleasant Street on the list for this year. We had held those up until HACA finished whatever they were going to be doing in that area, because I enjoy so much seeing streets that I pave immediately be cut to hook up to a water main. So
They're done.
Clay Street and Pleasant are on the list.
I mean, Clay Street compared to a number of the streets you just mentioned is, I mean, way worse shape.
And I do not disagree with you, but with all the work that was being done out there, that was a concern.
No, I totally understand
Yeah.
that. I think that was a wise
Yeah.
move, as much as I wanted to see it done. Previously, I think you were absolutely right in doing that, but now it's, trust me, I drive home that way many evenings, and I don't go any faster, because I can't go any faster on that
Now,
road.
when I pave that, what I'm going to do is they've got the Bowmanite crosswalks in there, which
Yes.
is, I'm going to pull those out and go back with our standard thermoplastic crosswalks.
It's not the end of the world, especially in exchange for getting a well-paved street.
Right. And I think what we see is that type of crosswalk doesn't hold up. So, and then it becomes very expensive to repair. So we're just going to go back with that at the end.
Well, anything you can do would be appreciated, I know. Thank you.
Joe, you have any questions?
Yes, I noticed in looking at the pro forma, there are a number of entries in different parts of Public Works for attrition. And then I started looking around, and there's the same entry in a number of other different departments. I'm wondering if the finance director can comment on what's the program here, what's the total amount of, dollar amount of attrition that is built into this budget, and what's the, how many FTEs does that represent?
Okay, if I may, set the table a little bit from a historical perspective. Before, I forget what year, the first year of Mayor Panlini's budget, there were 3 departments that had attrition. That was transportation, police, and fire, the 3 largest departments. Because of, if you remember and recall, there was concerns or just balancing constraints with that first budget. Brian Woodward, I believe, and the then director of HR, Paul, went back and looked at the turnover that occurred for 3 prior years in all the different departments. And based on that turnover ratio, they calculated a attrition number based on salary. Since that time, we haven't increased the attrition number for new COLAs or anything along those lines, because we recognize that it's tight for some of these departments, especially some of the smaller departments that really don't have a lot of turnover, to have this number as part of the budget. There are some budgets, including, I believe, IT, procurement, even finance, the smaller departments that don't have a lot of turnover, because if you put attrition into a budget, that you don't have turnover to. You're asking for a problem. So I will give you more detail relative to each department and the attrition in each of those departments in the table for the next meeting. But I don't have that with me, but of course we'll provide that for you. But that's the historical context. Unfortunately, once you put attrition or anything else into a budget, it's hard to take it out, because then you're going to have to fill that void, rather, with a revenue or decreasing expenditures.
Well, do these attrition numbers represent reductions in force, or are they a question of somebody's leaving at a very high salary and you're hiring somebody else in, a new body in at a lower salary?
It's effectively the second one,
Okay.
where you have turnover of people. You may not rehire. You may take, rather than filling that position in 3 months, you may have to wait 4 or 5 months. It's just a way to manage the cost. It's not a way to eliminate positions or eliminate staff. It's just a way to curtail spending.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
And I think Bruce meant that was Public Works, Fire, and Police, not Transportation, Fire, and Police. It's the 3 big departments. Public Works.
Transportation, yeah, transportation had to. But no, now, yes, now it's
Public Works.
Public Works,
Fire.
Transportation, Fire, Police. Before, though, you were not included, I don't believe. You were, okay. But you got more of it than during that 1 year, okay.
Okay, Alderman Arnett has arrived. I was just saying that,
Freshman court?
I don't know if you have any particular questions. David mentioned spent some time going through the major initiatives across, solid waste and the sewer rates and the energy park. But I don't know if you have any particular things you'd like to ask and look into the materials.
Well, I just had one thing that we wanted to wait for your arrival, and that's the water treatment plant staffing, because you asked that question at the Environmental Matters. Because I talked a little bit about the fact that we are producing water now that's going out into the distribution system from the new plant. So FY18 is going to be kind of a status quo year for the water treatment plant. But we know that the costs are going to decrease in the future. So what we had talked about back when the study was done about whether the plant should be county or city was a staffing level as follows. So currently the staffing is 1 superintendent, 1 assistant superintendent, 5 water treatment plant operator 4s, 2 utility mechanic 2s, 1 equipment operator 2, 1 public works maintenance worker, and 1 instrument tech, so for a total of 12 people. What was
11.63 here.
Is that what it shows? Okay, I can't explain that. The proposed staffing was 1 superintendent, and you remember this very well. I'm impressed. 1 water treatment plant operator 4, 1 water plant technician, 1 utility mechanic, 1 instrument tech, and then contract support for 200 hours per year. So 5 employees. So, obviously there's no way we could go to that immediately. We need to work our way through, and we need to we've got some employees that are going to be ready to retire in the near future, so hopefully we'll be able to get down to the right number through attrition and not through layoffs. But that's the number that is the goal right now, is the 5 employees plus some contract support from MES.
So when we were going through that whole debate about whether to partner with the county versus do it ourselves, there were 2 compelling arguments for me, at least. One was the lifetime cost. We're indifferent. And then the second one was that we would be achieving some economies in staff. Because we keep giving firefighters to the chief, you know, we have to find places to cut back elsewhere.
I
So
just
that
don't
was
get
appeal-
that. Just kidding.
I feel safer and safer all the time.
You have me confused, I'm the city manager.
Don't forget the firefighters need water to put the fires out.
But there'll be other operational savings. The chemical costs are gonna be less. We've got all high efficiency equipment out there. All of the pumps and motors are all high efficiency. So there's gonna be, besides just the staffing savings, there's gonna be other operational savings going forward from the new plant. And just the repair costs that having a brand new
Right.
plant that
Yeah.
have been dropped, so.
Yeah, and given the checkered history of our experience in partnering on sewer, I think that was really in the back of everybody's mind. Having our autonomy and control of our own destiny was, we didn't put a dollar amount on it, but it was there in our thinking.
Yeah, I remember saying, you know, having just come from San Diego where, you know, water is about the most precious thing.
Sure.
I couldn't imagine that we would give away our water, but
Did you talk about enhancements?
we don't have any. So we had a couple of small issues that were able to be worked out during our whole budget process with Tom and Bruce, so we don't have any enhancement requests.
Okay. And did you do the CIP?
We haven't yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry I was late, but I'm in the midst of suing the city, and so I had to be there with the lawyers.
Okay.
Do we have money budgeted for that?
No, but I'm going to be asking you for it.
Okay, any other
Just
questions
curious.
or comments on any of these? Okay, David.
Okay, we'll move on to the CIP, and I think Marcia's gonna depart, and Sam will move over one chair. Or stay where he is. You all have a copy of the, okay.
We do.
So just sort of as a highlight to this, since you have the projects in front of you, you know, we have sort of what I consider two categories of CIP projects. One is the ones that we do every year, right? Year after year after year. That includes the roadways, includes the sidewalks, the water lines, the sewer lines, all those sorts of things. So this year, those are proposed to be fully funded, $2 million for roadways. We added one to that category, which is traffic signals, because they've been ignored for a long, long time. So we need to start recapitalizing our traffic signals, so we put $50,000 in the CIP for that.
Will you be talking about that in more detail?
We certainly can.
Yeah, I mean, it's
If
just
you mind.
amazing how expensive
Yeah.
these traffic lights are. I mean, they've gotten more sophisticated, but my God, what is it, $250,000 each?
Yeah, they're very expensive. The facility projects are $350,000, that's just to do a lot of, you know, not huge CIP projects, but smaller ones that are outside our funding capability in the operational budget. You know, things like complete roof replacements and HVAC systems, things like that. We've got $905,000 for vehicle replacements this year. $405,000 of that is actually coming from projects that are completed that still have money in those budgets, so we're going to pull that out and use it for vehicles. We talked about the MS4 stormwater water quality projects. That's $1 million that was put in this year and is proposed to continue for the next 5 years or so. $100,000 for storm drains, $2.1 million for the water distribution system, about $1 million for water tanks, 2.6 million for sewer rehab, and 600,000 for general sidewalks.
What exactly is involved with that water tank rehabilitation?
Well, like the one we just did, the one with the Naval Academy logo on it, where we completely painted it inside and out, did corrosion control, did some health and safety upgrades, and then repainted it. So that's what this money goes for. This year, we're going to do Jefferson Tank
Okay.
in a similar way.
Are we still pursuing cell phone towers for the top of,
We've
Couple
got
water-
cell phones on the top of most of our water tanks. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we get revenue from that, and that goes in, as far as I know, that goes into the, the enterprise fund. So,
It was tempting, but
So, can we, this is somewhat off topic, but I will admit myself, I look at the enterprise funds and figure, well, they're revenue bonds and they have to be sustained by fees. Where are we in terms of the fund balances? Are we okay? Are the fees high enough? I know we have another rate study, right, for water, sewer and
right,
so
just
forth.
getting started.
Do we have enough money to pay for all of these revenue bonds and still maintain our proper fund balance?
yes, that's all part of the analysis to make sure that we comply with the requirements.
And where are we in terms of the water sewer fees? Are we okay with the level we're charging now, or do we have to
Well, we're
raise?
just kicking off the annual update of the rate study. We're just kicking off the rate study, so we'll know more, but I mean, based on what we saw last year and where we think we still are, I think it's gonna be another 3 to 4% rate increase for both water and sewer.
What's that in dollars per bill?
I don't know the answer to that.
Go up $4, $40, $400? Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
on average.
Yeah, we can get that number for you.
David pointed out the change we made when we did that authorization is that the city manager could do the five.
Right. But it is an election year, and that was a promise that the current mayor made, which was to lower
Yeah,
rates.
it'd be ironic if it,
Yes, well, okay.
Okay, so those are all of the sort of annual projects, and those were ones, you know, that just to revisit the whole issue of PAYGO, that would be wonderful if we could find a way to move those to PAYGO, since they're every year, year after year, and we're paying the debt service for those. And then we have the one-time projects. I had mentioned the swimming pool, which is going to start this year, the design and planning for that. I mentioned the Main Street rebricking that's going to start in January. We have city coordinate system to move from our antiquated proprietary, there you go, city coordinate system to a more standard city coordinate system. And if you have any questions beyond that, Sam's here to answer those.
excuse me, how long do you expect the Main Street rebricking to take?
If we have good weather, we expect to finish it before Memorial Day.
When you expect,
So if we have a winter like we have this past winter, if we have a winter like we had 2 years ago, then that's a whole different issue. But we're hoping for, as we always do, hoping for no snow and warm weather.
Presumably, we'll be doing that part at a time, closing off whatever we need to
We will
close
be,
off.
there will be a point where we will have to close the entire street down because when you start to actually do the rebricking, that's a continuous operation and you have to go from curb to curb. But the remainder, we will be maintaining traffic while we're doing the rebricking. So you'll still be able to go up Main Street.
Thank you, sir.
and how long will it be closed down entirely? How many days?
I believe we are probably looking at 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, somewhere in that.
Wouldn't that be a
regime.
wonderful natural experiment about closing it permanently? Yeah, I know.
Okay. The Truxton Park tennis courts are going to be rehabbed this year. That's using open space funds. Recreation management software, again, is going to use other funding sources, not bonds, 130,000. Trail Connections is in the CIP. That's also coming out of operating. Going to do some more work on Maynard Burgess, using other funds. And then landfill gas mitigation is 800,000 that we're gonna use from the fund balance from the refuse fund.
So on Maynard Burgess, did we ever get sorted out? So right now, there's a $100,000 grant that planning and zoning is trying to get.
That's my understanding, and then it needed a match, and so I'm not sure what the other funds are, or if this is the grant and it doesn't need a match.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
I was trying to, we had almost $2 million request for vehicles. We're doing,
We're doing 905,000.
right, so what are we're getting
We're getting a
emergency?
street sweeper, and we're getting, Chief,
Yeah, emergency, an engine, not the emergency ambulance or whatever? And are we getting a dump truck too? I thought there were 3. So it's just the street sweeper and the fire truck. And is this the squad, chief, or is it? Okay, pumper truck to us lay people. All right, and that's replaced the 1979 vintage? 97. Same, all the numbers were there. 1997. So it'll have all of the current environmental protection systems and protection. So protecting our staff. Yeah, great.
Okay. Other questions or comments about any of the CIP Public Works projects?
Wayfinding.
Sure. Actually, I do the trail connections. What exactly is that? I mean, I have the Poplar Trail in my ward, and they've been talking about connecting with other trails since I came into office. Do you know what specifically that involves?
I don't think either of us know. That was a transportation project. They've been working with the bike advocacy group, and so they have some spots in mind to connect trails, but I don't know what they are.
Okay, thank you.
We can get that for you.
Yeah, is the landfill gas mitigation definitive end of problem, or is this a continuing? Can we expect
So there's
more?
So there's 2 parts to the landfill mitigation issues. One is with the gas, and we know we're going to have to do that irrespective of how the other negotiations come out with MDE. We're also discussing with them whether we have to treat the groundwater that's coming off of the landfill and into the stream that runs along 405. So that's the question mark still. We don't think that we're going to need to do it. We're not sure that MDE agrees, so that's the discussions that are ongoing. But we're definitely going to have to do something with the landfill gas. So we're going to move ahead with that part of it with these funds and see how the other shakes out. But again, we have a fund balance that we've tried to hold on to because of the chance that we may have to spend it for these landfill environmental issues. So even if we have to do it, there's some funding available there to at least get it started.
Okay, thank you. And addressing Alderman Arnett's question, we'll be looking at wayfinding further when we get into transportation. It's my intention to introduce an amendment to authorize the wayfinding program, but I've currently got top men working on taking a look at the 2013 wayfinding program and seeing if it needs any enhancements before we, or tuning up before we do anything with it.
Can we
Sure.
go back to the traffic signals, because we just have 50K, and then it doesn't look like there's money in here for out years, but there's 23 traffic signals, we're only gonna do 50K and then nothing more, because I think when you look at the detail here, you see some big numbers, like $250,000 here, $250,000.
Yeah, and the 50,000 doesn't even replace one. That's intended to start the design process for I think one or two of the intersections. So, yeah, there'll have to be money put into the out years, and I guess we'll revisit that next year during the CIP cycle of how much is going to be needed for FY19. But the 50,000 is to get us started with design for
Right.
the oldest and worst
But
signals.
Wouldn't you, if you were just eyeballing how you would fill in the outgoing years, would you be putting in like 250,000, 500,000?
I think one, maybe even 300, so we can, fund construction and design for another one the same year, so then the following year we'd be ready for construction and design again, so we just work our way through.
Okay.
Okay, other questions, or?
So did we talk about the general context of the CIP for the Capital Steering Committee? I mean, we really whacked things way back, but that was in part consideration of where we are approaching our debt ceiling limit. And I think we need to be thinking about an item that isn't in here yet, but I think we do have to start thinking about soon. Maybe it comes after we do the nuisance flooding work, but I think we do need to be thinking about money in here for beginning to do the sea level rise analysis. I feel fairly comfortable there's a reasonably straightforward solution for downtown. I feel terribly uncomfortable there's any hope for Eastport. I mean, that's one way to win the tug, but so I really do think we have to start thinking about it.
Yeah, I know that you made that case within the work group, right? And the question will be sort of how does that bubble up so it is part of the menu of things to start to think about, and how do we help push that forward? Because I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a planning effort for this upcoming fiscal year. The staff is tied up completely right now getting the hazard mitigation plan put in place. And that's going to take them through the end of August. And then after that, they can start, and obviously we've got Public Works working on the hazard, the nuisance flooding. But then it will be time to start doing the background planning on, okay, so what do we do in the areas outside of just downtown, in all of our wards that have water?
Right.
And what are the hazards we want to protect against, and how do we do so?
And I think there's a more global issue, and maybe this is a parking issue, Mr. Chair, but we'll be at about 11%. Our ceiling for debt service is 12%. I know at the Financial Advisory Commission, when we had briefings from our outside counsel, 12% is probably at the, I don't know how you say this, 12% is low relative to best practices. We may even be able to go up to 15. But I think we'll easily, just in the normal course of business, get to 12 before we get into big ticket items. And so I think we really do need to start taking a long view of how we're going to manage.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just a reminder that our financial consultants will be here on the 27th to talk about these very issues, acknowledging the fact that we have to get ahead of it and that we have some pretty large ticket items that we need to address, and how do we do that in a responsible way. So more to come on that, definitely.
Good. That should be sort of a big part of the discussion this year, of this committee's work and trying to get at less of what we traditionally do, of trying to rearrange pieces in the budget and more trying to set the table for the future challenges.
So I think the corollary to that is, that I also think should be a parking lot issue, is I think we're deferring expenditures on a lot of things out. And certainly, we know we're going to immediately go right back into contract negotiations. I have every expectation that there's going to be a desire on the part of our union representatives to lock in a 3-year COLA, and maybe even a COLA bigger than 1%, which a 1% COLA is like 400,000, 450,000. Yeah. If you start making a 2% COLA compounding and over 3 years, you're starting to talk about a significant increase in our expenditure side of the structural deficit picture. And that's just one example of things that are just going to keep the gap between revenues and expenditures is just going to keep getting wider and wider. And then if we add in this potentially big chunk of debt service when we address, pretty monolithic problem like sea level rise, yeah, I'd really like us to be thinking about where we're going to be in 2020 besides having our feet wet downtown.
But don't forget, attached to any increase in pay is an increase in contribution to Social Security and to the retirement fund.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's not
Yeah.
tons and tons of money compared to,
No, it is.
but it can add up. It does add up.
It definitely does. That's the power of the model that Bruce built, showing us the whole employee compensation picture, is that you get to see the base salary with the COLA and then how that affects overtime and all of the contributions to the benefits and so on. So the multiplier effect has got to be pretty big. And with the compounding effect also. So I know I'm henny penny, but I do really have some concerns about the long run picture for our finances, and I think that needs to be an ongoing parking lot issue for this committee, and then go on to our colleagues on the council.
Okay. Sure. Alderman Budge?
If I remember correctly, which is debatable, last year we took a cut in PAYGO vehicle replacement in the operating vehicles and so forth, and there was a lot of concern about that driving up the longer-term maintenance costs. Where do we stand on catching up with that?
Well, excuse me, there were two pieces. Several years back, we created a PAYGO process where we were taking care of replacement of annual smaller vehicles versus the fire trucks and or larger public works apparatus. That was eliminated from the budget. Also, last year, the fleet maintenance was reduced by, I believe, about $100,000 plus or minus, with the expectation that some of the inventory, vehicle inventory would be sold, and we could use that to offset the dollars. That was a late amendment, I believe, brought in by Jared Littman, Alderman Littman. We increased the back up to recommended is actual expenditures. We took a 3-year average. We took a look at what was going on. So we increased the budget for fleet maintenance back up to the expenditure level. But as I was saying before, once you take something out of the budget, it's hard to put it back in. And there is the fleet replacement, PAYGO fleet replacement for all funds and departments exceeded $1 million. and we just don't have that funding ability to put a pay-go, a cash pay-go as part of a budgetary expense. So moving forward, either A, we have to do a potential capital program, a lease program, capital lease program of some sort, or find dollars within. Again, my contention is if it's an ongoing expense, do pay-go, because you're going to be paying for it no matter what, and then on top of that, you're going to be paying the interest on top of it. So it's cheaper in the long run to just bite the bullet and do a pay-go. But that's something that we're going to have to wrestle with along with some of these other capital items.
How much
So it's safe to say that we're just not replacing vehicles now?
Right, it's a very small, for example, the police department is purchasing, I believe, two, but we're not doing it in any large, with any large measure.
Do we, for our road fleet, do we have any understanding of the average age of the vehicle, or the median age, or the aging of the fleet?
I'm going to defer to Director Gerald, but with the new fleet maintenance program, yes, it's a pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, we do. We do. The age and the mileage and how many hours of usage, depending on what type of measure that you use for, for backhoe, you don't use mileage, you use hours operating. But we've got all that information. Since we have a fleet manager, he keeps track of that. So we've got all that available.
Do we have a grasp on what it's telling us and whether?
Oh, we definitely have an overage fleet. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He put together a fleet replacement plan for the next 5 or 6 years for the horizon of the CIP, and it was more in the range of $2 million per year than the 905 that got funded. But as we went through as Alderman Arnett mentioned, as we went through the steering committee process and needed to reduce the CIP expenditures, that was one of the cuts that was made.
Okay.
So there's two different kinds of fleets. There's the big fleet, and like, for example, we have a hook and ladder truck where the ladder, part of the hook and ladder truck is starting to have corrosion issues, and I think I calculated quickly that for the big vehicles, we're spending about $160,000 a year on maintenance. I don't know what we're spending for the small vehicles, but it's got to be considerable, and as they get older.
There's one point that we have to consider for the fire department is, for many, many, many years, we relied on the volunteers at Eastport to buy fire apparatus and ladder trucks and fire engines. And that's back when they were $100-some thousand a piece. Fire engines $500,000, ladder trucks $1.2 million. And the volunteers can no longer support that kind of funding. They just purchased a medic unit for us, but their money was supplemented with state grant money to buy the medic unit. So to expect volunteers to continue to replace, and if Eastport volunteers, if you don't know, Eastport owns both fire engines, ladder truck, both medic units, the utility. They have a lot of apparatus they bought and paid for over the years with their funds. They just cannot continue along that path because it's so expensive, and it's going to impact us at some point in time, without a doubt.
Is that in part because of the LSAT program, or even if that were not getting screwed with?
No, it has nothing to do with that at all. It's just the fact that they can't raise the kind of money they used to raise years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the prices are high. Yeah, so I don't know where we are on regular vehicles as opposed to the big equipment, but those repair costs have got to be climbing. How much are we paying for smart cars? Sorry?
Yes.
To give you an idea of the age of vehicles that we're replacing, I'm sure you all remember Chevy Cavaliers. It used to be way back, years and years ago. We just last year replaced the last of the Chevy Cavaliers that DNEP was using for inspectors. So.
Yeah. But you sold it in an antique auction, right?
Okay, is there anything else you want to cover, David, or just see what other questions or comments are? Okay, so obviously this is the first department presentation. I guess the question that we should, once we're done here, is there anything else that we want to cover? Anything that should be asked sort of as a process? But you know, we can let them go unless we have anything else for them.
I'm good. It's obviously pretty straightforward.
Great.
And when you don't have me for most of it, you get down to 45 minutes?
It's funny how that works. Bruce, is there anything else that you would want us to be covering as we talk to different department heads, or
No, I think,
the basis of that?
very good presentation.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thanks for your time.
If Ross is good, I'm better.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Well, the ones that I captured were the dollar amount of the water and sewer bill increase for different percentages for the average user, what the Maynard Burgess work is going to entail and where that money is coming from, and then the trail connections, additional information on the trail connections.
I think it would be helpful if you could provide a summary of our fleet aging.
Okay.
We don't need each vehicle but, you know, some summarization that
Yeah, I think
paints
that
the
would be
picture.
helpful. Sure.
If you look in your budget binders in the CIP section, I've individually tabbed pages on the new projects that are being introduced. In that, it includes the inventory of all the current vehicles. It also includes the background information on the trail connections and where the trails will be placed.
Good. Well, I know what Fred's doing this weekend with this book here. We'll crack the books a little more. Thank you very much. Okay. At the top of the meeting, you said there was something else you wanted to try and talk about there at the back, I thought, but maybe not. Not a, okay. Okay, cool. Anyone else have anything else they need to present to today? Sure.
Was any more thought given to a set of questions for the upcoming departments? I thought it was, we're going
That's what I
to
was-
give a
that's what I-
test run with
Yeah,
Public Works
that's what I
and
was
then
trying to
see.
if,
I didn't have a chance. I really thought the questions we asked a few years ago were good, but I have
I
a
would have to go back and find them. For some reason, I'm thinking that they were more directly related to the switch to the programmatic budgeting. But
I can't
can-
remember,
I
and
can
it's in a
look back.
pile in my basement, probably covered with mold. I thought there were like 3 essential questions. You know, Hillary might remember. I think she was still managing things when we developed those questions.
most folks who are coming after have a sense sort of what we're
Yeah.
interested in, so.
They know how Fred is.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of I mean, I'm sure it's been communicated to department heads and sort of inviting them to appear is sort of like become prepared to talk about what's in your budget, how it's different than previous years, and what else. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not so sure that there's some secret list of questions out there that we did a couple years ago that has any great
Yeah.
special sauce, but I mean,
I'm not,
I hear
I can't remember what they were, so
so it's pretty.
that tells you something, I think.
So happy to have people ask anything they want, you know, when people
Yeah.
come up on it. And the acting city manager who will be in his last day of acting city manager on Monday, right? He'll be here before us as the fire chief. Cool.
Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Any other comments or anything? Okay. Motion.
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.